mean, the biggest thing that I think I hear from principals is just trying to be a little comfortable with being uncomfortable, because it's moving at such a fast rate. And really, districts are still trying to figure it out. So is there guidelines or policies? Is it territories or provinces on it? And it's putting a lot of pressure on administrators to navigate it and try to work with their staffs to, I'd say honestly, develop what guidelines should look like in their context, in their grade levels, in their communities. And why it's so important that administrators get some professional development focused on this is because don't have time to do it.
This episode of Education Matters is in support of the Canadian Association of Principals Conference, which is a national gathering that brings together school leaders from across the country to think seriously about the role of leadership in education today. And that role, quite frankly, is getting more complex. New technologies like AI are arriving faster than systems can respond. Expectations are shifting, and in many cases, principals are being asked to make decisions without clear guidance, while students and some teachers are already deep into the change. To explore all this further, I'm joined today by Dean MacInnis and Dr. Alec Couros. Dean is the 45th president of the Canadian Association of Principals and the principal of École Sir John Franklin High School in Yellowknife. He has spent his entire career in the Northwest Territories with over 30 years in education and more than 2 decades in school leadership. His work is grounded in a deep commitment to community and public education in the North. And in 2015, he was inducted into the Northwest Territories Education Hall of Fame, which is pretty cool in itself. But he's also been recently named one of the top 10 principals in all of Canada. Our other guest is Dr. Alec Couros, who probably at this stage to many of you listening needs no introduction. He is a professor of education technology and media at the University of Regina. His work focuses on AI in education, digital citizenship, media literacy, and recently he's been working directly with school systems and governments to help shape how education can respond to the shifts that AI is ushering in. On today's podcast, we talk about what principals are actually dealing with right now, from policy gaps to real issues showing up in schools like deepfakes and misuse of AI. But we also get into the opportunities, where leaders can start and how AI can support the administrative side of their work, and why most people need to spend less time reading about it and more time actually playing with it. But I'd say the most important part of our discussion is on teaching and learning. What happens to assessment when AI can produce high-quality work instantly? What do we need to protect in terms of thinking and writing? And how might schools begin to rethink pedagogy so that learning is not reduced to something that a machine can easily replicate? There's also a thread throughout on leadership itself and what it means to lead in a moment where the answers are not settled and where being comfortable with uncertainty is becoming part of the job. So our conversation here is about AI, but most importantly, it's a conversation about leadership and the future of education. So without further ado, here is my conversation with Alec Couros and Dean MacInnis. Dean, Alec, welcome to the podcast. Excited to have this conversation today. We are doing it in support of the CAP conference that is coming up very quickly now in May. Dean, let's kick it over to you and let's give folks a background of what CAP is and why it's such a crucial event in Canada.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks for having me today, Jason. CAP, it's the Canadian Association for Principals annual conference coming up in Regina, starting May 5th on a Tuesday, going all the way to lunchtime on Friday, the 8th. Pretty excited. Lots of great keynotes, lots of great breakouts. The Canadian Association for Principals it's a very old organization. We actually will be celebrating our 50th anniversary next year, but we're an association that encompasses all principals and vice principals and aspiring leaders in public education across the country, from coast to coast to coast. And our organization tries to represent these administrators in different committees across the country, working with governments, working with teacher unions, and trying to make sure that voices of administrators are heard and are listened to. That's not to say that we're going to change education completely, but certainly making sure we have a voice, because we're a big piece. We're the decision makers, the certainly the guides of schools and school districts. We have an important role, and our association is just representing each and every one of them, whether they're in small town Grimshaw, Alberta, or whether they're in downtown Toronto or they're in Yellowknife. It's trying to work and support all those individuals across the country. That's kind of CAP in a nutshell.
Well, it's awesome, and I'm looking forward to it. I don't think out of all the conferences and summits and everything I've done over the years, I've never been to CAP, and therefore never one that's exclusively for school administrators. And I've learned over the years, certainly, that I think the most important role in the entire district are the principals. And I've always loved this idea, as the really good principals are the lead learners for the school. They model the disposition, the culture, the kind of learning, and the kind of educators and students that we want at every single site. So really looking forward to it. And of course, with us here, we have none other than the Alec Couros, who will be speaking at the event on AI and leadership. Is that right, Alec?
I believe so. Yeah. What leaders need to know about generative AI in education?
So I want to have a conversation with three of us about that. And I've seen enough of your presentations to know, Alec, it's not fair to ask you to give us a review of it because they're so dynamic. And I think the last one I saw, you had maybe about 24 tabs open and you're navigating it like a maestro. But maybe we can start by giving folks a little bit of a teaser as to how you've been thinking about AI and leadership in particular, because there are some real interesting nuances that I want to get into as to the role of the principal and the opportunities with AI.
So I'm going to cut you off first. I do want to do a shout out to CAP, because I remember being a junior faculty member like back in '99, and my edmin colleagues would always talk about CAP and how important it was. Going way back then, and I thought, well, that was amazing. That'd be amazing to go to, and I've gone to it a few times over the years and played a bit part, did a small presentation. So I was very happy to hear. I live in Regina, so maybe it was just the easy ask because I'm living there. But I'm happy to be part of it and to take a role as keynote this year, alongside some really other great voices as well. So I'm happy to be there. But it's a conference that's had great prestige. And, just a great reputation over the years. And many people I speak to, principals in particular, of course, speak very fondly of it. So I wanted to start there. In terms of, generative AI in education, I've been doing a lot of policy work. I'm working with the Saskatchewan School Boards Association, working with to help develop governance. I think there's 3 provinces now that have provincial governance, and the other 7 provinces and 3 territories are basically saying, you school divisions have at it. You can figure this out yourself. And there's a lot out there. But everyone's at different places, and so principals have to either interpret policy that doesn't exist, or try to figure out some of the requests for new software. And like, there's all the technical environment, there's the pedagogical leadership that goes with it. There's new tools released all the time, and some of these tools, if you think of the open Claw, Saga, some of the stuff you don't want to download on your machine and put it in right away. Otherwise, you're jeopardizing your entire school system, because the stuff can be quite dangerous, and it's happening quickly. There are all sorts of issues like deepfakes that are happening in classrooms that we were seeing, greater reports of this. And this is due to AI tools being able to very easily, take someone's identity and mass produce artifacts very quickly. There's an information literacy perspective that people don't know what's new or what's fake anymore. If you look at the new ChatGPT that was just released, there's a new release every day. Google kind of had the edge. Now it's ChatGPT has the edge. It's just like watching a race. Really impressive images, and they've kind of stopped from, like, it used to be just Grok that didn't allow you to, or only allowed you to create celebrity faces and politicians and so on. Now you can really easily do that, and very impressive results with these new tools. but I think one of the bigger pieces here, and it's within the instructional space, is like, how do we rethink assessment? How do we rethink, learning in these spaces? Like, what do we let go of? If, I'm using, one of the examples I've used recently is I can go into, at the beginning of a presentation, I can put in a prompt into my Claude cowork and say, go to this outcome from this curriculum, provide me with a lesson plan, a rubric, give me 3 different examples of student work, like fully produced, including presentations, one at the exemplary level, one at the intermediate, one at the beginner. Grade all of those, those papers, provide feedback. And by the time I'm half done my presentation, the thing's done already, and it's much better than I could have done in such a long time. So how do we think about time anymore? How do we think about product anymore? Do we need to sign the same things? I'm kind of getting into some of the things that we can talk to, but there's such change happening here because of this technology that we really have to rethink almost everything we do. Whether it's the AP policies or developing policy or whatever it might be. This is a time of change, but a time of opportunity. And some people might be saying, I'm happy to be out the door right now because it's just too much right now. But people may be thinking they want to retire, and others are thinking, like, this is the time I want to get in. Like, this is an exciting time, and I hope that we have, for those who really want to take this on, that there are opportunities to really shine in this space as leaders.
Yeah. So you really eloquently there kind of described the whole kind of ecosystem of what's happening around and what's impacting how leaders should think about AI. What I've noticed, and Dean, correct me if I'm wrong, because my sample size is much smaller than yours when it comes to principals, and probably more localized to here in Ontario, but I am working with a pretty big group in a school district here. And I was a little shocked at how few of them have explored everything Alec just talked about, or even really been thinking more deeply about it. They have a lot of frontline issues with kids doing, like Alec mentioned, deepfakes and some scary stuff that they have to intervene with and navigate. But I almost feel that folks are almost kind of paralyzed out of too many options, and they're waiting for direction. And as Alec pointed out, very few provinces have really given that direction. I think even when they have, it's okay, now what do I do as a principal? You wait for direction from your superintendent, but at the same time, your students are way ahead.
Yep.
So when you're thinking about everything that Alec just mentioned, is there a particular area or way, Dean, that you've been thinking about or trying to learn about it or even implementing anything?
I mean, the biggest thing that I think I hear from principals is just trying to be a little comfortable with being uncomfortable, because it's moving at such a fast rate. And really, and Alec alluded to the fact that really districts are still trying to figure it out. So is there guidelines or policies? Is the territories or provinces on it? And it's putting a lot of pressure on administrators to navigate it and try to work with their staffs to, I'd say honestly, develop what guidelines should look like in their context, in their grade levels, in their schools, their communities. And it's really becoming, and why it's so important that administrators get some professional development focused on this is because don't have time to do it. The workload that they're dealing with, they're dealing with so many of the, like say, the negative things that might be connected to AI or other issues. They're not getting to get themselves caught up. Work on with their teams what guidelines look like, expectations for staff, expectations for the kids, learning opportunities. Versus, I would say some administrators are scared. It's so unknown. So whether they're putting on the blinders on it or they're just saying no to everything, and that doesn't work. It doesn't work. It's the kids are using it. The kids are already coming to my high school well versed in certain platforms in particular, good or bad. So then, how can we help create that climate where a kid is learning, staff are learning in a positive way that's working for the school? But the policy thing is a big discussion across the country.
Yeah, and I think the policy, and rightly so, is more aimed at the teaching and learning side, right?
Mhm.
Because there's a lot of things to figure out there. But I'm not sure a lot of principals, or enough principals, I should say, have really thought about the administrative side of their role and what kind of opportunities there are there. I'll give you an example. I don't know about your areas, but all I'm going to say to all the principals listening is, like, those parent newsletters need a ton of work, right? And that's like almost an ideal use case to start implementing or playing with AI. Alec, are there any other areas, or when you look at the administrative side, some kind of entry points you can give folks to start thinking about how to start playing? Because one of the big things too with AI is it's not something you can sit down and just read about theoretically. You have to play with it. So any entry points for folks?
Oh, there's lots of them. I'm actually working with a high school recently requested they want, and I think I'm seeing this as a trend, because administrators, again, as you say, they're doing the teacher and policy covers some of the teaching and learning side, but the administrative side, like a lot of leaders are just saying, like, I should be using this for budget forecasting. I should be using this for communications and all of the things that we do. And so I'm hearing that from deans. I'm hearing that from administrators, executive level at universities. And so they need to know, like, where does the data go? Being careful to work within the confines of their tools. But even then, it's a little bit more tricky. So, for instance, if you're using to get into a very specific example, if you're using Microsoft Office, you're a Microsoft school. And, right now, if you want to take, throw up a spreadsheet in Excel, and it's within your sort of your data tenant, and, everything's hunky dory because it's within that space and it's all covered. If you click that, if you happen to have Claude in your Chrome browser and you happen to because the analysis is better on something like Claude, you can click that button and automatically that will just take it outside of the data residency. In that particular space. And so you're exposing your data, but you get much better analysis on your data as well. And so there's little things like that, just technical things that people may not know. I designed, so for this high school that asked for, they're wondering about parent communication. They're wondering about, analysis of, student trends and what demographics, shape student success and things like that. And so they sent me an email. Based on that email, I said to Claude, and I'm not trying to pump Claude or any other tool, but it just happens to be one that I use a lot lately. I was able to create a full website, and I could share it with you later if you'd like to see it. Full website that not only included like background to privacy, and of course I vetted all of it, but I just didn't send it over like that. Back down to privacy, things specific to the Saskatchewan context. Because it's the Saskatchewan high school. Then, the 4 things they wanted to do, I not only included tutorials to it, but I included data sets that we could actually click on from the website, play around with that data, because of course we don't want to use real student data. And so more and more, like the tool also helps you to learn in such a great way. We're thinking about how AI is helping AI to learn. Like the newest, I think 90% of the new version of ChatGPT was probably coded in using AI, using like Codex. And so, we should be also using it to learn as well. At a level, where we are, for most principals, we have, principals, of course, have advanced degrees. They have lots of experience being a student. This works really well for us. These tools can be really great to extend our learning, but then we have to think on the other side of things. How is that, the 5-year-old, getting into school as they're exposed into these things, and what do they need to know to really, think about before they even touch these tools? And what do teachers have to know about that in terms of developmental, pauses, and, when to introduce AI and in what ways, the way we speak about it. There's just so much at stake right now. And so, again, you're kind of speaking like at the productive level in high schools. I think there's lots we can do there to benefit teacher workload, administrative workload. But on the other teaching learning side of things, that's a whole different gamut. We have to treat that very, very differently.
I agree. So let's come back to the teaching and learning side. I want to drill down into a lot of that, Alec, because, like, for example, for us 3, gray beards, gray hair, no hair. Cognitive offloading to a certain degree is okay because we've done the study, we've done the work, we've been in the workforce for.
Oh, it's vital.
It's vital.
Got the background knowledge.
Right. Yeah. We've also have that the habits of mind. Like we wrote essays the old way, painstakingly to learn how to write, to learn how to think, I would argue. What are the implications of that, of cognitive offloading for a 17-year-old, 16-year-old about to go to school? So let's come back to that. I just wanted to plant a flag there because Dean, I wanted to give you the opportunity, like maybe give some folks some practical example. Like where did your exploration start? How did it start? I'm not even saying like, how do you start using it in your work, but how did you started thinking about AI in your role?
I'll tell you, I started thinking about it, and I was hesitant. Not going to lie, I'm a lot closer to the finish line in the journey than the start line. But it was literally a colleague on staff, and he had been playing with it. He had been playing with rubrics. He had been playing because we're switching in the Northwest Territories. We're switching from basically an Alberta-based curriculum to a very similar BC curriculum. So in that process, lots of professional development staff. So this particular staff member really was taking a deep dive in comparing the curriculum, resources, and really rubric building. And as I just became more intrigued. So I was learning from him. He's doing all the work, and I was kind of stealing ideas. But it came down to, for me, the entry point was communication, was the number of responses via email or letters or, even social media posts that I have to do to my 700 kids and 1,400 families and all that mix. It became such a fast process once I played with it. And I use it all the time. But it's also a learning process. I have a conversation with chat. I turn around it. So at that point, it's not like you're saying, hey, write me a letter to tell the parents school is canceled tomorrow. It's more a conversation with it. So the learning's happening. Like you're still learning through the process. So the piece that was developed at the end of it is my work. And I think that's what shies many, I'd say, experienced teachers, I would say, or experienced board office people, it shies them away. They get nervous about that. Is as we alluded to, is the learning process gone? Sure, I'm sure if I asked it to write me a 25-page paper on War and Peace and I never read the book, well, that's not good. But that's where the teacher says to the kid, well, explain it to me in your words.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, one of the best overall use cases for everyone is as a thinking partner, right? Not as necessarily a production tool for all your thinking, but as a thinking partner to run ideas by, to get new ideas, to, in that case, check phrasing and things like that. Okay, so now if we do turn to the real crux of the issue and look at the implications for teaching and learning, Alec, how do we think about pedagogy writ large? Like so much of, and let's take my two fields that I love to study in literature and philosophy. All of that, especially at the high school levels, is, let me say, AI-able, at least the traditional way we've taught it, which is, lecture, discussion in class, and then go home, read the text, and write the essays. How do we start thinking about a pedagogy that is not so easily AI-able?
You have to kind of go back with like, what grade are we talking about, right? You just spoke about the idea of AI as the thinking partner. And I think that's one of the key ideas. So there's one method I've seen recently where you can summon a council. So it's sort of like you've heard of a steel man argument or a straw man argument, right? Straw man argument versus steel man. Steel man is like, if I have an argument and you actually oppose, if you're Jason, if you don't agree with me, for you to articulate my argument is what's called a steel man argument. And I think there's a lot to be said in that sense. So you have to know enough about the person's opposing argument to to take that up. And doing that live, doing that in a way that we can provide evidence is really, really important. So it's not, and I think we've come from a place of surveillance versus providing evidence. And I think that's a real big piece around this. Like we've never really, we've never, especially in recent times, especially in higher ed, we see, first drafts and that sort of thing, not so much as like progression, but this is evidence that people have actually done the work themselves. But we shouldn't be using it as evidence. We should be using it as data to inform the feedback. And sometimes it's done, but in the last little while, it hasn't been done in the same way. So something like the council idea. So you have this multi-perspective analysis. You kind of create a committee that come from it's almost like 5 different agents who have different perspectives around like maybe foundational ideas or these might be implementation. It depends on of course, the type of work that you're doing, but there's 5 different perspectives. And then if you were able to take whatever work you've done and take those arguments and bring them in, how non-scalable is that idea in real school where you actually have 5 critics that are going to give you feedback? Outside of the social dynamics of school, because we know that, for instance, if you have a thinking partner in school, if you're partnered up with someone, you get very light feedback in many ways. This is actually, constructive, phrased in a positive way, could go deeper into disciplinary knowledge. It also knows where you're at, so it has a scaffolded reality. So that's just one example of how you might do it, but more evidentiary type work where we actually provide evidence of our learning. And I'm not saying, there's certain things that we shouldn't sacrifice. And I wrote a piece in my Substack a while ago, and it was really around the idea of we shouldn't sacrifice writing as a whole. Like the essay
100%.
is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just that it's become a bad thing because we're very product focused.
Yeah, correct.
But the idea of writing as thinking is really an important piece, but we're not assessing the right things. So those are just some examples of, we can get really deep into tons of different examples, but really going back to what was the purpose of the essay in the first place? And I think that is one thing that AI uncovered that has, many of us knew that it was much more product focused, but it really brings that we can't ignore it anymore. We have to really think about this much deeper.
Yeah, I mean, hallelujah to that. I mean, people can think about how well they know something, then try to write about it. That's when you really find out how well you know something. So do either of you have any inclinations or even strong feelings as to, and back to your point, Alec, earlier about what age groups we should be thinking about and how we're engaging different age groups with AI, or not at all?
I mean, younger kids are using it more naturally. I mean, honestly, because we're seeing them coming in the high school, and they already have experiences. So to think if we're gonna, we're gonna catch them in high school and reorganize and teach it in a different way so they know how to handle this. It's got to happen. It's got to happen at the middle school level, is my personal opinion. Not that I have a stack of research on it, but generally because that's the teachable time that kids learn to navigate, what's real, not real, learning some skills and techniques about, how to navigate that. How do I use these things as a tool versus, let's say, as the kids would call it, a cheat? So it is that learning tool. To me, middle school is a bit of a target. So when they get to high school, because our job right now, I think it's pretty tough, is in this moment in time, our kids are, there's going to be a 25% to 30% of our kids are going to go off to post-secondary. We want them knowing some strategies, not leaving here in it not being, let's say, taught or discussed or navigated, and then they go off somewhere and all of a sudden it's not appropriate, or it only can be used in certain ways. I think starting younger with it, because the reality is they're using it. They're using it way more than most people realize.
Yeah, and I think you kind of said it's starting younger, but starting around how to use it. Alec, is there an age that below which you would say no, just it's not the place, it's not the time?
So I think as Dean mentions, I think middle school is a target, but we start back, like we start talking about this in kindergarten, but not, putting kids in labs and making them use AI and putting headphones on them and that sort of thing. Like, we don't do that. But we talk about it. Like, how do we talk about AI? Let's not anthropomorphize it. Let's not let's be sure that our language is really clear about it. I think that we talk about a reality that these kids are going to grow up into, that these intelligence, these non-embodied intelligence live beside us. But, we caution them that if you rely too heavily on these things, you are not going to gain the intelligence that your parents have or your guardians or other adults in your life or the teachers in the room or even the high school students. So we be very cautious about that. So we do this I think of my mom's soup analogy. She makes this lovely lemon orzo Greek soup, and of course, if you put the egg and the lemon together, it kind of ruins it. You have to be very slow about this, right? Or it ruins the soup. So whenever I'm thinking about that particular analogy in school, we have to be very, very cautious about this. So the language that we use when we bring it in, and being very careful to name this threat to our own cognition, to our own intelligence, and my kids know that. Like, it's really interesting. Like, that my kids, when I talk to them, like, their teachers are doing a good job. Like, they know that if kids are using this, they know it's not something that they should be doing at this age. So, like, and one of the things I wrote about recently is just this idea that, like, it's fine to go in grade 12. And if kids have practice writing, to go in and generate an essay and go in and analyze it. But you shouldn't do that as the first approach that you have to writing. We shouldn't be in middle school and saying, we're not going to give you any practice writing. We're going to give you things that you've never written. You're going to be like art critics who have never ever done art, right? And you're going to go and analyze this. I don't think you can analyze this stuff unless you've written it. So I think that's really important, is that we have to teach these skills in a sequence and make sure that there's competency and mastery of these skills, and then introduce things that could be more AI related. And so it's not so much about the age, it's much more about when do we attain those particular sequences to move to the next level. So age is less important to me, but roughly middle school is when we start to introduce AI in a more significant way.
Yeah, and I really like that notion early on, talking to them about what it is and giving them
and what it is
language.
and the implications of it living with us. Right. Implications to our well-being, to our mental processes, our understanding of the sycophancy and its tendency for us to befriend it and to trust it, and we can't do those things. And so from a social and also cognitive sense.
Yeah, and so that's exactly where I was going with that in terms of why I view the importance of talking about it and understanding the impact on kids from a young age, because we've all heard at this stage the stories of kids that have been using it as social emotional support to horrific ends, from everything from mental illness and confusion with reality to the worst case scenarios where these AIs have encouraged distraught kids to take their own lives. So are there any fields that you think are a complete no-go when it comes to an AI tool or bot? Because as we all kind of are, we're aware of what's happening in the ed tech world all the time, and I'm seeing a ton of products aimed at kids around SEL. And I don't know, just maybe call it the Gen X tendencies in me at worst, or actually understanding something about this at best, but it gives me the heebie-jeebies. What's your sense, Dean?
Look, I don't know enough about it, Jason, to be honest. I'm with you. It makes me personally nervous, but on the flip side, I have also gotten feedback from a particular parent I've been working with that their child is struggling, and it's been a positive experience. So it really comes down to, it's like Alec alluded to, how you're using it, like in a constructive, I'd say, somewhat supervised, manner. But man, I'm not gonna lie, it makes me nervous to some degree. Maybe that's the old-fashioned age in me,
but I mean,
I'm not sure.
but I think it's also like the humanistic side to
Yeah.
us. To me, social emotional well-being is human to human
Yeah.
contact, right? Eye contact,
Yeah.
understanding of feelings, not just of response to words and to grammar and to logic of a sentence. It's what's behind, well, how is that emotionally said? Now, maybe they can start picking up on these, but to me, I don't know. I like my general rule when I'm talking to folks about this is stay away from the social emotional side of it. Alec, you got any instincts or any examples there for us?
Well, I think most educators are going to agree with what's been said about this so far. Is, we may not know enough about it, but we know that it's important, that the human contact is going to be really, really important. Apps, I think, will have the tendency they'll have the ability to augment and provide additional experience in possible scenarios, for instance. And simulations have been used in SEL for a long, long time, so it's not something 100% new. But if a student goes into school and the only sort of conversation they've had for the entire day is with a bot, that's probably something we don't want to go down that particular road. But if the majority of conversations have been with peers, with adults that they trust, then I think that's great that we augment additional or enhance or extend those with a bot for not only the digital literacy perspective, but of course the SEL perspectives. But I think what's important is, while most government officials, legislative bodies, people in mineral superintendents will all agree with that, there's going to be a time where we see this. Look at all these teachers. They don't spend all that time doing lesson plans anymore, unit plans. They have all of this extra time now, and so there's two outcomes of that. It's like, can we go with fewer teachers?
Right.
No, let's go back to this idea that we actually really are fond and we believe of the importance in social relationships. So let's say all that time that we've sort of banked again because we've done these things in a quicker way, let's reinvest that time into classrooms. So reorient the classroom so that there's actually more time to spend with students. So if we're going to say bad, SEL is bad in the context of AI, then what are you going to do about it? Because the next step would be to, how do we augment those experiences with human relationships? How do we reorient the classroom or reorient time of the teachers to do things differently, so that let's save time on the points that don't matter as much, and then rebank that and put it into spaces where it does matter.
So, Dean, what does that look like structurally within a school? Because part of it, Alec, to me, is complicated by the fact that when is planning time really? I raised by educators, planning time was at home.
It's home,
for the most part. So saving that, I'm not saying we shouldn't save that time, because for the social emotional well-being of teachers, that only those that teach know how complicated and how consuming the job is.
Yeah.
But on the ground, Dean, are there some, I don't know, I don't like the term efficiencies, but some ways that we can create that space for the more genuine teaching and learning that we know needs to happen more regularly?
I think it certainly, AI opens that door to have the time within the class to then do better observations, having better conversations, assessing at a higher level. It has that ability. It comes back to, obviously, but it still go back. We're in the people business. We're in the interactive business. We're in the relationship business, because it's a person to person, or a person to 28 kids in a classroom. But if we can use tools that allow us to have more conversations with kids, better observations, it really opens up that door, because I think it has then the ability to have stronger relationships, creating those times for kids who, let's say, need to have more human contact and quality contact. I think it opens up that door for sure, because, as you alluded to, a ton of work that teachers will do is on prep time, after school, before school, and at home. If we can cut back a little of that, then I think that gives that much more energy to that teacher in that classroom that's going to have conversations and rotate in that room and do those observations, because that's what assessing is now. It's the skills. We're assessing skills. It's not sit here and do the math test, get it back, there you go, thank you very much. That has not happened in a while.
Wonderful. Alec, how do we do in terms of covering your keynote at CAP? We get most of the high points?
Well, I'm planning right now. We're talking about planning time, right?
He's taking notes, right?
Good ideas. I'm writing the slides right now as we go. No, I think it's helpful. We're hitting a lot of the key points. I think that that'll probably bring up and articulate these. I think the planning time question is important, because I think you're right. Like, a lot of this stuff happens unseen from students, but I do think that there is an opportunity, and I think Dina alludes to this a little bit. Is like planning time should be in front and transparent to students. And I think sometimes, like, it's okay to say to the, like, this is what I know about you personally, to the class or to students or to groups of students. AI is telling me to do this, and let's go down this road. It thinks that you're at this particular level and you can go to this particular level. And so I think doing things transparently in front of students.
Yeah. Well, let's use, I like that.
Helpful. And this is why we choose not to do this, because I want to take this human in the loop opinion and say, actually, this is not good. AI is misleading us.
Yep. Yeah, I love this.
Those processes are really, really kind of an important piece.
We can use the AI as an antagonist in the classroom.
Exactly.
It's true. You get staff like, hey, I'm not going to give you the rubric that I made last night. No. We're going to make it together right here, right now.
Yeah.
Do it that way. And then you come up with something. And I know a staff member did this not that long ago, and it turned out just okay. But then the learning opportunity for the kids and the teacher to make it what they wanted. Like, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I guess I have permission for my keynote to go up there and pull out a tool and say, okay, what am I going to talk about today?
It'll tell you right there on the spot.
Right there.
I can give you the transcript from this conversation saying, based on this podcast,
what should I talk about today?
Yeah. What did we miss? Well, with that, fellas, I'm looking forward to seeing you in person, Alec, in your backyard in Regina. And I hope the weather's as beautiful as it is in your background there.
Yeah, I hope so.
It's quite snowing today, so lucky AI doesn't show that. Yeah.
Well, with that, gentlemen, I think we will wrap here, and we'll continue this conversation May 5th to May 8th at CAP. So thank you very much for joining me today.
Hey, thanks, Jason. Thanks, Alex. I appreciate it. It was great.
Yeah, thank you both.
This podcast is recorded on the territory and Treaty 13 lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, and on the traditional territory of the Huron-Wendat and the Haudenosaunee. The show is edited and produced by the marvelous and talented Andrew Mastroianni. If you like what you're hearing, make sure you subscribe to us on Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcast. Until next time, remember, there's absolutely no inevitability as long as there's a willingness to contemplate what's happening. I'm your host, Jason Buccheri. Until next time.